good to me.
Okay. Okay, welcome to Amazing Doers, where we believe that through having healthy conversations, our nation's workforce will overcome institutional racism, prevent stress-related diseases, and find the tools they'll need to do more, be more, and achieve more. I am your host, Glenna E. Davis, LA's Health Equity Nurse. Today, we are talking to Sydney Cooper. Sydney is a Howard graduate, and she received her master's in public health degree from Boston University. Sydney is also a blogger. Sydney, welcome. Tell us why you started your Healthcare Scoop blog.
Yeah, so I started my blog, I think it was the second semester of my first year of my master's program. And actually studied healthcare administration in undergrad at Howard. But I was really fortunate to be in, a majority Black community. So a lot of the things that I was learning while I was there, like I think it's a lot easier being around people that look like you and like really feeling like you can make a difference. Whereas when I moved to Boston, like it was a complete culture shock, like very different from where Howard is. And I also realized while I was attending BU that I was paying a lot of money to access information and knowledge that was important to not only work in the healthcare field, but also for consumers of healthcare to even like navigate healthcare. And it's no secret that healthcare in the United States is extremely complex. Like, in my opinion, it's that way for a reason, because our country is really focused on making money in healthcare. And I think that the system. So I started the blog with my initial intent to just make sure that I could share the information that I was learning in my program with that are actually using healthcare. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, and you're right. It is designed that way for a reason. Healthcare is a business. I like to tell people that you have a right to health. You do not have a right to healthcare because healthcare is a business. Your primary goal should always be to take care of your health, your mental health, and your physical health. America is sick. We are in this global pandemic between Black Lives Matter protests for equity, political race wars, macroaggressions, like the senseless killings of Black men by police officers, and high number of unemployment rates for those of us with full-time careers in the healthcare industry are feeling magnified and isolated at the same time. So on that note, let us talk about microaggressions in the workplace and how it affects our mental health. Sydney, you said, about your pivot from Howard University to BU and the culture shock there. At HBCU, all things are Black, everything is directed towards being Black, where at Boston University, all things were white, not for any reason other than that's just how it is. So you had to assimilate. Now that you're in your career, working with diverse teams for healthcare goals, being an educated, career-driven Black woman in public health, what has been your greatest challenge to date?
Yeah. So in all honesty, I think my biggest challenge is authenticity. Like, you can be 100% yourself at Howard, in my opinion. Like,
Right.
it's a lot of people that had similar experiences growing up in either all white areas and being the only Black person. Like, growing up, for context, the only other Black person I knew growing up was my sister and my parents. Like, that's crazy. So I went to Howard to allow myself to get to know myself on a deeper level than
I love it.
yeah. And I just felt like, I would meet people at Howard that I could relate to, had similar experiences, and that I could discuss things that I was dealing with on a regular basis openly. And like,
Right.
that's people, it's literally a group of educated Black people. So it was a really like nurturing environment. And then
that's a breath of fresh air, because Black people, in my opinion, in my experience, are so wise. You know, some people call it street smarts, but I think it's deeper than street smarts. It's just this light and this charge that we have within us, but are not given the opportunities because of adversities here in America. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
So then going straight, back to Boston, like that's very similar to how I grew up. I
Mm-hmm.
thought being at Howard, it promotes a sense of confidence, promotes a sense of self-worth that you can bring out into the world with you. But then when you get back out there, like you realize Howard is really a bubble and the rest of the world is not like that. So just being able to still bring all of the things that I learned about myself and learn to appreciate about myself into the workplace, into my new academic program, and just feeling like that confidence while still being one of the only, if not the only Black person in the room, that was a struggle for me in that transition.
Right.
Because it's like, I think a lot of us, especially Black women, like our group is so heavily scrutinized and criticized, and everything that we do is watched with a microscope, and what one Black woman does gets applied to the entire group of Black women.
Mm-hmm.
So being the only Black woman in a room, and I feel like I'm in a position of privilege. Like I hate this, but in some instances my opinions are that, or they become representations for my entire community because there's no one else there.
Right.
So that's a lot of pressure. So
It
not only like, being educated in those spaces, but also being authentic. That can be hard. It's a hard line to walk.
it is a hard line to walk. So were you more comfortable? Are you more, what settings are you most comfortable in? Or did you feel like you had to learn to be authentic in both settings at Howard University and at Boston University, just because your background wasn't growing up in inner city or in Black communities?
So I was definitely more comfortable at Howard. It's like
Okay.
amazing how quickly you shed like some of that, like that mask that you put on
I
growing.
agree.
So like, and it's
It's
weird
like,
because
I'm
growing up,
home.
yes, exactly. Exactly. Like, and I at the time I thought I was being authentic growing up, but like that's such a crucial age. Like you're getting to know yourself, like you're
Right.
developing into the person that you want to be,
Mhm.
but you're not around anyone that looks like you. You're not around anyone that can realistically relate to the, microaggressions or issues that you deal with on a daily basis, because you can't necessarily understand it unless you're going through it. And it's so
And
difficult to explain when it's just you. So
right, right. This is true. And I think a lot of it has to do with it being a perception of how we see things. It's not saying that it's not happening. It's just that our perspective between being an African American and a white American are different.
mhm.
And so they don't see or appreciate what it is that we are seeing and are affecting us in great ways that affect our upstream factors and our ability to have intellectual growth, because it's just like, oh my God, this is so much pain associated with it. And if I'm talking to doctors or therapists about it, who still are clueless about how I think or my intellectual capacity or even my spiritual understanding of who I am, it's not relatable.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
then it's just like these people are like the gatekeepers to health, but then they don't see my healthcare needs at all.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like, where do you go from there? And so, this is why I feel at this time, many counties have declared racism a public health crisis. So, how do you, as being a Black woman in public health, adjust to institutional racism now being recognized as a social determinant of health?
Yeah. So this, for me, actually, it being recognized in the academic community and it being recognized like on a public scale has been two different things for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
studying public health, especially, I'll say Boston University is a pretty open university, at least from the public health perspective. I think like being in the field of public health, people understand that Black people do disproportionately deal with, you know, health illnesses or health disparities than any other group of people. But with that being said, that doesn't necessarily mean that it transfers to healthcare providers, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that transfers to healthcare consumers and the general public.
Right. Well, what's missing then for that transfer to occur?
It's really just the knowledge gap, and that's like one of the main reasons I started blogging about healthcare in the first place, because there's just, and this might be in any medical field, but there's just such a huge gap between those providing care and those that are actually trying to obtain or consuming healthcare. Like it's scary. And
Yeah, it is. It is purposely created also because of language. So there's a language barrier. We may all be speaking English, but when you're a healthcare provider, you learn a different language, and then you stay in that realm of language speaking, and then you're kind of talking at people who's coming to you, making you feel as if you're like more superior than the person who is in need of healthcare. So one of my goals in my company is to teach people who are healthcare consumers that we are the professionals of ourselves, and healthcare providers serve us.
Yeah.
So you're going to need to use all of that language and those big words and all of that studying you did to figure out how to serve my healthcare needs today, which is normally chronic stress, because discrimination in America for Black people is stressful, and stress kills.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and stress to me, and what I do, I've recognized it as being the missing system to preventing disease in the healthcare industry, because for some reason, the healthcare system is without a system to prevent stress-related diseases.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, I can go on and on about conspiracy theories, but the point is that everybody across all variables and walks of life enter the healthcare system, but we all get sick and die.
Yeah, it's inevitable.
It's like, wait. That's not supposed to happen that way.
Yeah, it is. It's so unfortunate. Like I feel like, so I got really interested in this when I was in grad school, because like that was one of the most stressful times in my life. Like you're an adult, but you're still in school, and like school is really hard, and your degree is 100% dependent on you. Like it's not really like undergrad where it's like you're surrounded by friends that you live with. Like grad school is people that are in their own lives, and you're just kind of there absorbing information that you're passionate about, and you have to push yourself through that.
Right.
So I started like looking into how stress impacts. I was particularly interested in stress and maternal mortality in African American women. And there's been a couple of studies done, but it's interesting to me that there's not more research, because I just like, to me, Black women undergo the most stress of any group.
Oh, no doubt. Stress affects everything from our mindsets to gout. So, you know, yes, no doubt. And it is pressurized, and it is systemic, and it's on our jobs and our academic journeys. It's everywhere. And they want to like almost indoctrinate you when you go into college to make it think it's something else in all these studies and stuff. But you know that sometimes the simple decision making could help reverse, you know, repetitive issues caused by chronic stress and prevent that disease. But we're not taught to stop the mechanism. You continue the mechanism and you take a pill or something so that you can continue taking the insult or the assault. And then when disease comes, they're like, oh, well, now you have a depressive disorder. Now you have systemic lupus, and then here's a pill for that. But if we take a moment to see what is actually causing us our chronic stress and reevaluate it and change behaviors from it, then it could possibly even stop the disease from manifesting.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like preventative health is,
Yeah,
to me, the only health unless you're reacting to something that's already happened. And
right,
I just
right.
don't think enough emphasis is put on it
It's
for
not.
especially the Black community. And I mean,
Yeah.
I understand because of the social determinants of health, we don't
Hmm.
have the same luxuries as other groups of people
Right.
to prioritize the social determinants. Like
Right.
we're still trying to make do with the situations that we're in because of things like slavery, things
Mhm.
like, this, poor civil rights to no civil rights. Like we're
Right.
still recovering from that. We haven't even gotten to the point to be able to focus on preventative health. That's still a
Right.
luxury.
Right.
It's not
Which is
something.
which is why I am so impressed with the decision for, like, here in Los Angeles, where I am, to defund LAPD and to reallocate those funds into community resources. That alone is preventative health care.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I feel like my medical side of my profession, it's not their fault because they're taught to treat disease.
Hmm.
For me, I feel like it's a nurse responsibility who's taught to prevent disease to step up and do the preventative side of healthcare. Because when you go to the doctor, they're looking for a disease.
Yeah.
They're not looking for, oh, I'm going through this, all of these non-medical causes that does lead to disease. They're not saying that those things won't lead to disease. They're saying, I'm not equipped to handle that. That's
Yeah.
not my role. Like, you're coming to me and asking me to be something that I'm not. I treat disease.
Yeah. They're
So,
trying to solve the problem. They don't necessarily get to see, unless you're, primary care
mhm,
or a family doctor. I feel like
right,
they don't really get access to people before there's an issue. And
right.
I mean, the healthcare system's trying to change. I will
They
give us
are.
credit on that, but we're
Yeah,
definitely not there yet.
right.
So
We're looking for the answers. We're more open. I can't say that it's just one person's fault. It's just the way the system has been built.
yeah,
And education is missing, and it we're gonna have to get people interested in being accountable for their own health outcomes.
yeah,
So, yeah. So, we agree that institutional racism is an upstream factor preventing health equity for many African Americans. It could be mental, spiritual, caused by microaggressions, or even macroaggressions, like we talked about in the police department. But nevertheless, it paralyzes us and it disadvantages Black communities for generations. And so, this is what you were just talking about. Um, the effects from slavery. These things are just repetitive in us. So I want to know, like, just perpetual, I'm sorry, do you have any recommendations for minorities to learn to cope with microaggressions in the workplace so that they can swim upstream?
yeah. So I mean, I'm definitely still trying to figure it out on my own, on my end. Um,
Right.
but what's helped me, I think, is one, finding a community of people
Hmm.
at work that you
Hmm.
can relate to, that you can open up to, be mentored by, and mentor. I think that's so important because it's really hard to feel like you are facing all of this stuff alone, and chances are you're not. It's just,
Right.
I feel like diversity in the workplace, we're sprinkled. It's like you have to like bring your community together and just, I mean, community health, like even that is just people coming together to talk about, ways that they've dealt with some of the same issues, and ways that they've prevented things, ways that they've reacted to microaggressions or macroaggressions. And
Right.
I think it's huge, especially for Black women, to find a mentor, because that's someone who's been through it already and has figured it out enough to be where they are, and they can help not only pull you up, but give you tools that they might
Right.
have wished they had when they were figuring it out. And
I
that'll just,
agree.
lower your stress levels,
Right.
at least a little
Right.
bit.
That's easy to say. Yeah, but it's like that's easy to say, but how do I do that? What does that look like? And we
Yeah.
have to, figure that out. And so that is another that's why I do Amazing Doers, and so that we can have this place of community where everyday people, employees, or students, or people who aspire to be employees, and scholars can find the tools that they need to do more, be more, and achieve more, because there's so much that you can get from just having healthy conversations. So yeah, what is one word of advice that you would give your younger version of yourself?
That's tough. I think there's a lot of advice I would give myself, but I think like the biggest thing is to just trust in yourself and your abilities, as long as you have a passion for what you're doing and you take the time to prep. The rest is like, you deserve to be where you are. Like, I think sometimes there's a bit of imposter syndrome. Like, we don't feel like we deserve a seat at the table, or we don't feel like we should be speaking on behalf of a group, or we shouldn't be speaking up in meetings, or whatever it is. But I think trusting in yourself, your own worth, and your ability to problem solve and put things together, I think it's super important. It took me forever to get there, but it's like very important.
Well, if you're there already, I'm super proud of you, because I think I still have a little bit of imposter syndrome. I still have to convince myself that I know what I'm talking about and that people need to understand, because like for me, my upstream factors, the last grade I finished in primary school was the 6th grade. And like I had a baby at 16, and like, so I have a lot of what they call adverse childhood experiences, or inimical experiences childhood, that could have labeled me as statistic, but somehow I made it through. And sometimes I feel like, well, if I did it, everybody can do it. But that's not true. I did it so that I can show other people how to do it. And that imposter syndrome of me, also, I'm like, I want to share my experience, but nobody believes me, or nobody thinks, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, because those are experiences that are so important to share.
Right. And it happened to me. So, it's my truth, and I owe it to my community of people who look like me, which are Black women and college educated women and registered nurses, whether they're Black or not, to hear my story.
Yeah, that's so important. And you never know who you're going to inspire to do things after you share your story. So
right. And that's what we're here for. We're here to, inspire people and help them to get to where they want to be in their life. So, Sydney, what is one question you wish people would ask you more often?
I think, at least from like a career perspective, I would like to get asked my opinion more often. I think Black women don't, depending on where you work, but even in grad school, just like, I feel like I would have to like push to offer my opinion, whereas other people might get asked or called on. So I think like asking my perspective and my opinion would be great. And I think they should ask more Black women their perspective and their opinion on everything, because we're here too. Our experiences matter. The things that we go through are very real. And I think it really takes like asking questions to get the conversation even started. So.
Well, I really thought I was the only one that felt like that. I have been to conferences where I've been overlooked, and it's like, I'm like, and everybody else but me. And I'm like,
like, am I invisible? I know I'm not invisible.
Because you're literally looking past me, and I see you doing that, and other people see you doing that. So I don't know what that is. And I don't know if we have to be, which it'd be a shame if we needed to be a little bit more forceful or assertive in getting our voice heard. But I don't want to feel like I have to fight for everything,
And that's already a stereotype on us anyway. So it's like, it's
like a catch-22.
Yeah. So I would much rather be more aggressive, more commanding of the room
Mm-hmm.
than not share my opinion. And for a while I wasn't like that. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think I have to think back to my experiences at Howard, and like
Mm-hmm.
I was asked more at Howard what I thought, but I think even thinking back to like how people did appreciate my opinions,
Mm-hmm.
even though it may not seem like that out in the real world, people do actually care. And I think our perspectives are important. And even if you do get overlooked that one time you share your opinion, sharing it the next time and just continuing to do that is so important.
It is. It is. Our voice matters.
Mhm.
Yeah, our voice definitely matters. And in order for to heal America, I think all organizations must understand that Black life matters.
Yeah.
Discrimination is chronic stress. Chronic stress kills. Our nation's workforce is affected by implicit bias, and we must learn to appropriately cope with job stress to prevent burnout. And burnout are America's public health crises. Injury to medications,
Mhm.
homicides, suicides, poverty, mediocre lifestyles, all of these things are caused by bias and not knowing how to cope appropriately with job stress and bias. And so, our nation's workforce is essential no matter what department you work in, what role you in, and without good employees, large organizations would fail.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes. And
Yeah, we are
I would
keeping it going. So,
exactly. We are keeping it going. And it's not an easy task when you're also overwhelmed
yeah.
with a lot. And so thank you for getting up and doing everything that you need to do. So I just want to say to the audience, if you're watching Amazing Doers on YouTube or Facebook, comment, subscribe, and like this page. This is your health equity resource. If you want to join in on live conversations, go to www.yourrxforlife.com. Download the 7 secrets your doctor never told you about stress, and you'll get an invite to a live conversation. Sydney, because success leaves clues, not only clues to business building, but clues to the keys of life, health, and wealth, tell everyone how to stay in contact with you.
Yeah, so you can either go to my website, which is yourhealthcarescoop.com, find me on Instagram, yourhealthcarescoop. Yeah, that's about it for now. I post as regularly as I can with my daytime job, and I'm always there to answer any questions, whether it's a DM or an email. Like I love talking about this. I'm a healthcare nerd, so let me know any questions you guys have.
We need healthcare nerds. Thank you. And everyone, be well.